You know, bringing Pitfall to the NES didn't seem like a bad idea at the time. You know, the original Pitfall on the Atari 2600, which was a classic on that system from Activision, back when they actually made actual video games and not rehash and rehash of the same shite. Pitfall is a rather solid platforming adventure game, quite open-ended, and it's quite fun to play. If you ask me, however, I think Pitfall 2 The Lost Caverns is a much better game and does what any good video game sequel is supposed to do. The adventure is somewhat grander, the tonality of the game is more epic, and there's a lot of elements in this game that you would not normally get from a 2600 title. In-game music, scrolling screens, a huge adventure overall, just really wonderful stuff. I mean, just by looking at the bare essentials and the bare elements of the sequel alone, it's a no-brainer that the Pitfall adventure should be brought over to the NES. It seems like a perfect fit. Or at least it should have been a perfect fit. Unfortunately, the only thing super about Super Pitfall for the Nintendo Entertainment System is the 10 hours of super sleep that I got after playing this thing. Seriously, you want a good cure for insomnia? Play this for about 5 to 10 minutes and you'll be out like a light. That easy. Now fortunately, I just consumed 10 cups of coffee to record enough footage for this video, so bear with me as I fumble and mumble my way through Super Pitfall for the Nintendo Entertainment System, because let's be honest, that's the best I feel it deserves. And I'm probably being very nice. Story-wise, Super Pitfall looks to be a remake of sorts of Pitfall 2 The Lost Caverns, where you are the adventuring Pitfall Harry, and in addition to plundering lots of gold and treasure and getting a diamond, you also have to find your niece Rhonda and your cat Quickclaw. No big deal, they made this game somewhat more grander in scope by having Rhonda turn into a statue, and you have to get medicine, and you also have to get a key to unlock Quickclaw. And also you have to seek out items, collect crystals and keys to open gates, traverse to another realm. No-brainer stuff. And look, Pitfall Harry has a gun to defend himself against other critters. And a rather inappropriate Mario stash for good measure. Ugh. Okay, so for the most part, this is your run-of-the-mill side-scroller. Run and jump all over the place, shoot baddies, collect items, simple stuff really. The game's mostly non-linear, so you can pretty much go anywhere and everywhere you want, with certain areas being blocked off by a barrier requiring the appropriate key. And while it's nice to be offered this sort of open-ended freedom, this is ultimately one of the game's many detriments. You are given no indication as to where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. Some better designed games that follow this open-ended direction tend to have cues and clues as to what you're supposed to do. Whether it be text clues from people or just the way that the path is structured, sometimes you'll come across a path with stronger enemies than you would in a second path, so you probably should go to the other path first. It might have something you need. You know, little things like this, that gives you some sense of direction. In Super Pitfall, you're given no such indication and you're pretty much on your own, so you either have to wing it, just fuss around the level a bit, hopefully you find something, or you just give up and just look up a walkthrough online, just follow that instead, because you ain't going that far, man. Trust me, you ain't going that far. Now, I've read complaints about Pitfall Harry being armed with a gun, but I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, the NES has a second button, so we might as well use it as a gun, or some other weapon. You can shoot the gun while you're jumping, which is good, or while you're running, but not while you're crouching, which can get problematic as some of the smaller enemies such as spiders and scorpions are already out of your reach because you can't crouch and shoot. You can only hit them if you're shooting from a lower platform, and that's about it. So for the most part, you have to jump over them unless they're moving in the direction you're facing, at which point you either follow them bit by bit or just wait until they walk off screen. It's a bit of a hassle, yes, but it's not the end of the world. It's not a major flaw in the system. It's just, and to be fair, there are some games that do have this system. Meanwhile, the controls in general tend to be sticky for lack of a better term. Pressing down on the D-pad will cause Pitfall Harry to crouch to Mario, for lack of a better term, and he will stay in this position as long as you hold on to the D-pad. Rolling your thumb left or right will keep Harry in this crouching position for some reason, and it is something that can get you killed needlessly, so you have to take a moment to release your thumb from the D-pad to have Harry stand up. And if you forget this little tidbit, you're going to get stuck in the crouching position and you're going to die. More often than not due to a collision from an enemy, not because he's stuck in that position for far too long. On the bright side, you do have limited control over your jump while you're in midair. As long as you're not dropping from a high point, then you drop like a rock with very little to no control. This is especially frustrating when you're dropping down a pit or landing on an enemy or a bed of spikes, because you don't know where you're going to end up. The majority of the game takes place in caverns, underground tunnels, and the like, and all of these environments tend to look similar to each other. As a result, it tends to be very easy to get lost in these levels, with seldom few cues to let you know how far you're off track you're at. Not to mention that the level design in general seems to have no rhyme or reason. It just feels like the whole thing was cooked up in the level randomizing program or something like that. What other reasons would you explain these ladders in the ground that lead to nowhere, or that random snake in the corner moving within a wall? Christ, shoot me. On top of that, the explorational aspect is somewhat flawed, baffling, ridiculous, moronic, stupid. Take your pick. Like I said, you have to look for items, whether it be keys, extra ammo, or extra lives. However, the only thing that's in plain sight in Super Pitfall are the stacks of gold that you'll come across. Collecting gold will earn you lots of points, and every 50,000 points or so, you earn an extra life, which makes collecting points in Super Pitfall not as useless as some people might think. Isn't that right, Jimmy? Yeah, that's right, Jackoff, I'm talking to you. Meanwhile, the other items that you have to look for, the extra ammo, the extra lives, the jewels, yeah, they're hidden from plain sight. You'll have to jump across certain areas, usually by a sweet spot that you'll usually discover out of plain luck more than anything else. Also, at times you have to come across warps that will take you to other areas in the game. Again, these warps are hidden from plain sight and you'll have to uncover these by jumping to a certain point. In some cases, you'll have to jump into a bird to uncover these hidden warps, which, coincidentally enough, look like the same birds that can kill you. Yeah, there have been many outlandish means of uncovering items in video games, but this has to be the most baffling approach. No doubt you could go to every single dead end you could find. You could jump around like a fucking idiot, hoping something will pop up, only to end up with nothing more than 3/4 of the time. Ends up being a colossal waste of time, and considering the game's negatives outweighing whatever positive there might be, it only adds to the utter frustration and contempt that one would have with this game after playing it for so long and accomplishing absolutely nothing. And wait, what's this delay I'm getting between intermissions? Load times? Seriously? Load times? Oh, God. And then there are the sounds of Super Pitfall, or the sound in general. And suffice it to say, I say this with complete honesty when I say that I've heard Atari 2600 porno games have better sound effects than the Super Pitfall. I mean, oh, Christ. And is it wrong for me to want to swap the lousy tune of the NES version for a much better version? I know some people will moan about the swapping of a subpar chip tune with another song of better quality, especially when it comes from a more advanced gaming system or makes use of actual instruments. Those people watching this review can rest easy because I'm not going to be doing that. I will not be taking the NES poop tune and replace it with a song from a Super Nintendo game or whatnot. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to swap it with a song from an inferior gaming system, specifically the theme that loops in Pitfall 2 for the Atari 2600. Enjoy! Even by NES standards, Super Pitfall is lacking in the visuals. The game seems to suffer from heavy flickering and several bouts of slowdown at times that seem to hinder your progress. This is most evident with the waterfalls such as it is, which will magically appear and disappear at seemingly random intervals. And if it appears right above you, it will take you down. Oh yes, it will. Putting aside the occasional graphical glitches taking place on the screen's edges, Super Pitfall's graphics are pretty bland and basic. The various characters animate rather poorly, the scrolling is somewhat choppy, and there's generally very little variation upon the maturity of the game, which is somewhat disappointing. It's visually lifeless and somewhat sleep-inducing. Even the Pitfall games were more visually appealing than this, and those games got their start on the Atari 2600, which was never known for being a graphical powerhouse. And this isn't taking into account the other ports of Pitfall from the Atari 2600 to various other consoles, which improved on the graphics drastically. And on the bright side, well, they had that balloon from Pitfall 2. That has to count for something, right? Right? No? Oh. I tried. Among the various flaws that plague Super Pitfall, I think the one true downfall about this game is that it's just plain old boring. Putting aside the control issues and the lack of direction in this game, Super Pitfall just feels derivative and empty. Just the overall presentation of Super Pitfall, the bland graphics, the overall mundane, shitty sound, excuse my French. None of this instills any sense of satisfaction when you proceed further in the game. It almost gets to a point where Super Pitfall's challenge lies not in whether you can overcome the game's challenge or not, but rather how long you could put off turning the game off before overcoming such obstacles, because there's no real rewarding feel to the whole game. And apparently the end screen is also rather lacking and not worth the aggravation that you get to actually finishing this game, should you find the will to do so. Even when faced with the most frustrating scenarios in the old Pitfall games on Atari, you're eventually overwhelmed with a great sense of accomplishment when you overcome whatever obstacle is thrown at you, and the game itself is quite rewarding when completed. With Super Pitfall, there's no sense of joy, no sense of accomplishment to be had when overcoming the more frustrating aspects of the game. Especially when such frustration originates from, what spot do I jump in to find a damn key, or why can't I shoot while I'm ducking, or why the hell am I not picking up the item? I'm touching the item, it's still, oh there we go. Or my own personal favorite, why does Super Mario die when I jump on a frog? It's quite telling when an Atari 2600 video game is able to forge a much more enjoyable and entertaining experience with the console's limitations than a video game on a console that far exceeds the capabilities of the wood-grain console. The NES library has a massive library of video games to its credit, and within that library, a rather sizable amount of open-ended adventure games. Just about any of those games would be a far better choice to play than this, if you have a longing for the Pitfall experience. Dust off that old Atari system and play the original Pitfall or Pitfall 2 games. Hell, I'd say give the 16-bit Mayan adventure a shot if you can. Leave Super Pitfall into the pit of mediocrity that it just fell into and just play something else instead. This game is just not worth your time. At all.